Majority Whip Tom Emmer, I'm sorry, goodness. It is the day after. It is the day after. Majority Whip, thank you for joining us. Where do you think things stand in terms of this reconciliation process, and what do we have to look forward to in terms of the fight ahead?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. And yes, it is the morning after. And I suppose if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you're really happy. If you're a Chiefs fan, you're not. And if you're an American, you stopped watching probably after the commercials at halftime because it was a big blowout. Reconciliation this week, the goal in the House was to mark up a budget resolution. I don't know how many of your viewers understand that's not reconciliation. That is simply the instructions to the committees that will draft their portion or their section of the reconciliation bill. It has to do with revenue and expense, and it tells them what they should be writing that bill to. It's been a point of contention in the House. Where is the floor on savings and cuts as opposed to what's the assumption of growth? I think you'll see we made some progress last week at the White House with President Trump, and I think you'll see more this week. Regardless of what's happening in the House, the Senate, Lindsey Graham, as you're well aware, is moving forward with a budget resolution in the Senate Budget Committee. So Republicans are going to get this done. I still believe the House will lead.
What is your take on what the court said about DOGE on Friday and what that ultimately means to how you think about budgets going forward?
Well, I'm an Article 1 guy. Congress will determine that stuff. But I'll tell you what, DOGE, the whole concept, and Elon Musk, Donald Trump ran on a campaign promise that he was going to shake up the status quo in Washington, D.C. He was going to make sure that Americans could see behind every closed door, that they could see behind the curtains that have been drawn closed for years. The stuff that is being exposed by DOGE and Elon Musk, it's exactly what Americans wanted. I mean, I think there was a CBS poll yesterday, Andrew, that had 70% of Americans believe Donald Trump is doing exactly what he campaigned on, and this is an example of it. I think they're doing a great job.
Let me ask you this, because, look, I'm all for transparency. I love the idea that we get to actually see where all this money is going, and especially when we look at things that have real question marks next to them. Having said that, I think I look at something like, USAID, and clearly, and this is the part that we will never understand, right? It's sort of a massive soft power effort around the world. Some people could call it a massive bribery effort around the world. But I'm imagining there are little line items for things that you and I would look at and go, that makes no sense. That seems crazy. And yet, for whatever reason, it was done potentially because there is some trade-off on the other side of it. At the same time, I should also mention that countries like China, with the Belt and Road Initiative and others, are also maintaining both soft and hard power around the world, and how we should think about that.
Well, first, USAID, I think the big takeaway from this whole discussion the last couple of weeks is that there are those of us, Andrew, and maybe you and I agree on this, there are some programs within USAID and, frankly, all of these different departments that DOGE and Elon Musk and his group have been looking into. The problem is we should be disgusted and upset that the good things that were intended have been literally undermined by people who want to spend U.S. taxpayer dollars on fairy dust. It's amazing the things that they're doing, and that's what's getting exposed. And when you talk about soft power around the globe, the U.S. influence is still, people want to be the U.S. They know that the relationship, when they have it, is a good one, as opposed to China, which China is just there to make sure they take your resources and move on. They don't, it's not the quality that the U.S. does. But where we are not, Andrew, that leaves a vacuum.
Well, one of the reasons I raised the question is, for example, I noticed, there was a big subscription to Bloomberg, for example, that the U.S. government seems to have. I would want the Treasury Department to have Bloomberg terminals. I would think that would actually be a very necessary tool in their toolbox, given the amount of money and Treasury bonds that they are issuing. And I would want them to have access to all of that information. If there was somebody in the White House that wanted to have a terminal, I would want them to have it. And so anyway, I raised that just as one tiny example where I think the American public looks at that and maybe because I'm closer to it, or what I have a view that maybe others wouldn't have. But right now, if you were to sort of go online and talk to the folks around Doge and the like, they would say wipe out all of those subscriptions.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting approach, Andrew. I think you're, frankly, confusing the issue. The bottom line is they paid millions of dollars to Politico. They paid millions of dollars to the New York Times. They paid millions of dollars to these outlets. For what, Andrew? This is why the American people need to know what this is. And we in Congress, Doge and Elon Musk have been a healthy enhancement to the great work that's already being done by the men and women that hold election certificates. Again, Article 1, we're going to have to pass legislation related to this stuff, but the exposure is ongoing, and this is what 77 million people voted for. This is why they wanted Donald Trump in the White House, to shake up the status quo. What we've been doing has not been working. It's time to chart a new course, and he's doing that. He's accomplished more. This is the third week to the day, I believe, of his administration, and he's accomplished more in 3 weeks, right, I would argue, than Joe Biden did in his entire career.
What do you make of the steel tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs, which have just been put on? And how long do they stay? Is it part of a negotiation? Are we going to see it sort of come on and then come off again, potentially as other countries maybe change their policies? Or do you think it just ratchets up?
This is a tool. Donald Trump is the master negotiator. He has used this tool incredibly well. It's been very effective, and you don't even have to take my word for it. Talk to Biden's Commerce Secretary, who, in specific reference to the steel tariffs in Trump's first administration, admitted that they were very effective. So Donald Trump's doing what Donald Trump was elected to do. He's putting Americans and American producers first. He's making sure that people who have been taking advantage of us for decades now have to treat us fairly. We want to be able to have open and free trade, but we want it to be fair.
All right. Majority Whip Tom Emmer, we very much appreciate you joining us on this Monday morning, the day after the Super Bowl. Who were you rooting for?
Well, you were in the box, right? But you in Taylor's
I was
box?
rooting.
Where were you, Tom? With
I was sitting next to the president. Yeah.
Ooh, well,
he had a good seat.
Look at you.
But is he not allowed to say what was? You were just looking for a good game, or what?
You know what, Andrew? The truth is, I'm rooting for the Vikings, and they weren't there. So I wanted a good game. I wanted something competitive because I'm not a fan necessarily of either team. We saw it competitive, certainly on one side.
Hey, have you ever seen a pass rush like that, Tom? Seriously? I mean, it's like Kansas City thought, you know what? Saquon. We got to take care of Saquon, and totally forgot about their quarterback or something. Yeah. Or there was just, those guys are so big. I mean, I could stop those guys literally for. If those guys were running at you, Andrew, when you just moved to the
nanosecond.
Tom, did you guys? Here's the question.
Joe, they said Kansas City had the better defense. I think that probably was all the incentive the Eagles needed.
Hey, Tom, I know the president left at halftime, or maybe even before halftime. Did you guys leave? Did you leave with him? And was that decision made because the game wasn't that exciting, or was that because that was sort of always the plan?
No, I traveled with the president yesterday from Palm Beach to New Orleans. And then we left when we left because we landed last night around midnight. So I don't think it had anything to do with the game.
Fair enough. It's great to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us this morning.